Ready.
This meeting is being
Hello
recorded.
everyone, it's us Tara and Shrima again with our second episode of Girls Tech Talk. In our last episode, we talked about what all are the challenges any business faces when their application is still in on-premises and it's in old framework, why they are trying to move to cloud platform. Now, in this episode, we are going to talk about the basic steps or basic stages any of the cloud migration project follows for moving from on-premises to cloud platform. Now, Stima, I would like you to start about these steps, and then we will discuss about each of these steps in some basic overview.
Thanks, Tara. Hello, everyone. So the idea is like we'll talk and project story of cloud migration. So you can treat it as a life cycle of a cloud migration project. If you are working on migration project, you might have seen or you might have worked in any of these stages. So we have a draft view of that.
Yeah.
So this is our all the phases all together. So first we will talk about cloud assessment, which is a very important phase. So if we have already identified the services that we are migrating towards cloud, then we need to do the as a system study. What type of application it is, that is the first question. Is it an COTS application, or is it a web-based application, or some other type of application? We have to do their source code study, as well as how they're running, what's the application runtime. So there are many tools available in the market to do the source code analysis. So for example, if it is an application that we have to that is not fit for rehosting, after we run our cloud analysis report and we see that we cannot rehost the application as it is, then we may have to think about what are the things we have to refactor, what are the things we have to reconfigure on that application. Or maybe we also take decision whether we have to altogether replace the application, we have to rewrite it altogether. Also, what if the application is running on a specific type of runtime, maybe on a on-premise server, then what is the server capability? What is the configuration of the server? We need to find the similar stack in our cloud provider, like similar services, set of services in our cloud provider. So these are the few studies or few data points we try to find out in our cloud assessment phase. Also, we should give an priority to the network we have in our on-premise server. What is their configuration? And we have to bring the similar set of configurations in our cloud environment. And the next phase is POC and landing zone creation. So let's say like what we do here. I mean, is it even required, and what are the things we must do?
Yeah. So for before starting any POC and landing zone creation, I would like to add like POC is something which is not a compulsory steps for this life cycle phase for the cloud modernization. It totally depends upon your requirement. Whether you are like fully aware of the work, whether you know like if when you are trying to move from as is to be, you know about all the challenges you are going to face at the development time and what will be the solution. Most of the time things are not going to be that straightforward. You definitely will be having some of the blockers which you are not aware of, like you know the solution, but in theories like you don't know whether that is going to work in your scenario or not. So for these kind of things we usually do POC. In this whole life cycle, POC is something which is going to take very less amount of time. Like for an example, if your project life cycle is of maybe 6 to 8 months, then POC you have to do in maybe 1 week or so. Like you cannot take more than that. So you have to figure out like smallest part of the application or just do a sample work by which you can prove that the solution which you are trying to provide is going to actually work in the real-time scenario. So that is there. And landing zone creation is basically the infrastructure which are going to be there in your Azure platform. So for that, you definitely need to create all these infrastructure. You have to provision it. Since we are talking in terms of Azure, it will be like tenant creation, subscription creation for everyone, and then create the resource group, create the resources, whatever is required. Like if there are on a basic, if I talk about like if your application is having a front end, a back end, some services, then maybe you will be requiring some storage account, you'll be requiring database server, you'll be requiring application server, or maybe if it's a PaaS platform, then you'll be requiring app services and so that is what you're going to do in this POC phase, and then landing zone creation. After that, you are going to move for your next steps for in this life cycle, and there comes data migration. Now data migration and application migration actually go hand in hand. Like it's not something first this will be done and second this will be done. Both of these can be done like simultaneously in your project. But data migration is something which again may or may not be required for you. It can happen like the application database is all working perfectly. The on-premises servers, database servers are all good. And since business has already invested their money in those database servers, they don't want it to move it to cloud. So this can happen that you don't have to move the databases to cloud, but you have to move application to the cloud. So it will be kind of hybrid structure. But most of the time we move databases also because they are not performing that good. So there comes different services which Azure is providing. It's like EAS, infrastructure as service, and then PaaS, platform as service. So you have to decide, like when you do the cloud assessment, you try to find out like what will be the best offering for you for your migration work. So if it's EAS, then you will totally just move the databases to Azure provided SQL Server machines, virtual machines. And if it's a PaaS, you are going to move your databases to Azure provided Azure SQL servers. Like these are PaaS platform. The difference between these two is like when you are opting out for EAS, the organization's IT team has to take care of the maintenance of these servers. When you are moving for PaaS, Azure is going to give you that support for that infra, and all you have to take care of the databases, data, and everything. So it's like you don't have to worry about infrastructure. So, and when I talk about data migration, again, there are several tools which you can use for migrating the data. And we will link out again about these tools which you can use. And also, when I told you about like POC phases, and when Shima talked about cloud assessment phases, there also we can use several tools. We can leverage these tools provided by third party, provided by Azure, Microsoft itself. We will try to give out the links which you can have a read about all these tools, and you can utilize it in your projects as well. Once data migration is done, or like you're doing it all together with application migration, in application migration, the actual works come like data migration is also the real time work. And this is going to take most of the time of this life cycle. Like this is the time where the developers are going to do the work of migration. So when I talk about migration, it can be infrastructure migration, it can be the code migration, it can be the services integration platform migration, and then as we talked about, it can be data migration. So you have to, as you have decided like what all are the Azure counterparts of the on-premises services you are going to use, you have to provision those infrastructures. There will be some members in your team who are going to take care of these infrastructure provisioning. There will be some members in your team who are going to take care of the build and deployment of your application. And then there will be developers in your team who are going to take care of the code migration, who have to understand like, okay, the code is written in either in suppose old platform, then they have to like old framework, they have to update the framework. Maybe it can happen like there are some web services, WCF services, anything like even the UI, and then they have to migrate it to all together to latest framework. for an example, I'll say, like, if there are WCF services, there are web services, and now you have to move to REST APIs type, then you have to change it, like how at the time of cloud assessment also you will be doing the assessment whether you are going to rewrite it, or you are going to just maybe writing some wrapper in front of those services so that it can behave as a REST APIs. So these things are there which you are going to do about it. It's a like really a huge and complicated thing. We will talk about this application migration phase in length in some of our episodes, but on basics you have to do all the migration work over here. Now, since we are talking about Azure cloud migration, security is something which is very crucial, and you have to take care of that while development. So you have to always keep in mind, like whatever you are doing, whatever you are writing, uh, these things should be in done in a secure manner. And for that also, you can get some of the Azure provided services by which you can make it more secure and more robust application in the cloud itself. So yeah, that's what we do in application migration. Now, once this is done, we go to our next phases. And Shrima, if you can let us walk through for cloud monitoring and optimization. Yeah.
So thanks, Tara. That is a great insight for database migration and then application migration. And as Tara said, security is really an important feature here, and that comes again, in parts of also cloud monitoring. So cloud monitoring is like we have onboarded few of cloud services, like we have, maybe if you are thinking about storing those keys or secrets, we have like Azure Key Vault, and then a bit of storage account, and also we have Azure data services, which could be Azure Pass SQL or Azure VM we have used to host any our web application or any backend application, or maybe the database. So here comes the need of monitoring, like who is going to accessing those and how they are accessing. Do we have to restrict some policies, uh, restrict some users, so we can build policies around it. So this, I will say, like, in cloud environment, this is a new feature we will be enforcing here. Like this monitoring may not be there in your on-premise server, but this is very much required on your cloud infrastructure, just to secure the secure, and I would say like better monitoring of your workload. And there are few policies, and it is very easy to do it. Azure or any other cloud provider uh, offers us. So that is a part of, once our application build is almost done, we can say, and now the deployment, testing, and issue fixing stage is going on. So once we have the proper monitor is set up and proper dashboard is there, and then we can think about, operational optimization. With at this time, I'm hoping that my application has faced some of the production workload, means it is already there in the production for maybe, let's say, a few weeks. So we can understand, like, how the application is performing, what are the most used resources, or maybe we can say like how the user statistics. And also we can see, like, what are the resources that is not being used, so we can take decisions like do we have to scale up or scale down our resources. So that gives us the organization better cost effective view, means I can have the same workload and the same application, but I can reduce few resources from that and save some money from there, and that's really helpful. So also if it is required, that at certain time that application is having some production issues, or maybe we can say like outage because of that particular workload. So do we have to scale up that application or at a certain time? So those type of monitoring metrics we can see and think about it, and how do we optimize it. Those are the decisions we do in this phase. We can say like, this is our product hypercare support.
Mhm.
So that's altogether of an migration project life cycle. Means we start with the assessment and do studies, like how do we do it, create POCs, and then what are the phases? Do we migrate data? Do we write? How do we write the application? And then monitoring, and then see like how the project will how long it may take. We had some slide and we took guidance from AWS documentation. So I would say like overall these are the phases. So if you see like assess, which is our cloud assessment phase, and then mobilize, how your team is working. I mean, it's like how your team is divided and working all of those areas. Who is working on cloud assessment? How we are doing the data migration? Which team is working on cloud migration and application migration? All together, there are different teams are working. DevOps teams are responsible for the deployment and operations, and there are developers and there are testing teams. So if you see, it is having a week 15 plan. So I would say like in this week 15 plan, it's like a small to medium number of application. So that I say like these are the phases, we can say. There are any insights on this slide?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, like usually we try to do the migration in small chunks. We doesn't take the full application and then take 2 3 years for migration. It doesn't practically that doesn't work in that way. Usually we break it product area wise, functionality wise, so that we can work in an agile fashion. So that's what we do. We try to break it like 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, at max 8 months project. We
Yeah.
usually break it out and then try to migrate it. If that works all well and good, then we try to take other product area of the application and then migrate it around. So uh, I would just like to close it with the line that agile is something which is the kind of backbone of any kind of cloud modernization projects. Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you see like if it is week 16, they are trying to say like release on web, means I am releasing a part of the product and then the next phase and then the next phase. So that's how we see our complete migration will look alike. And again, just on the closing note, stay tuned. We are trying to bring more stories on cloud migration,
Yeah.
and this episode is for them like who wants to learn on cloud migration and what we do once you get the job. I mean, these are expected, if you are working as a cloud engineer or DevOps engineer or general developer or tester, these are the things we do in day-to-day basis. So I hope this is making helpful and we are open to suggestions. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will talk about several other cloud stuff in our next episodes. Till then, have a nice time, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.